$1 trillion that we're going to find.
No, that part is completely ridiculous. You are not cutting $1 trillion worth of government spending, okay? I wish. So cute, my little Hasanito.
And like, what do you mean a mine? Like, yeah, there's a limestone mine where we store all the retirement paperwork. And you look at a picture of this mine. We'll post some pictures afterwards. And this mine looks like something out of the 50s because it was started in 1955. So it looks like it's like a time warp. And then the speed, the limiting factor is the speed at which the mine shaft elevator can move determines how many people can retire from the federal government. And the elevator breaks down and then, sometimes, and then nobody can retire. Doesn't that sound crazy? There's like 1,000 people that work on this. So I think if we can take those people and say, like, you know what, instead of working in a mine shaft and carrying manila envelopes to, boxes in a mine shaft, you could do practically anything else. And you would add to the goods and services of the United States in a more useful way. So anyway, so I think, that's an example. Like at a high level, if you say, like, how do we increase prosperity, is we get people to shift from roles that are low to negative productivity to high productivity roles. And so you increase the total output of goods and services, which means that there's a higher standard of living available for everyone. That's the actual goal. Everyone's very quiet, by the way. Are people normally this quiet?
Your detractors, Mr. Musk.
What?
Including a lot of Democrats.
I have detractors?
You do, sir.
I don't believe it.
Say that you're orchestrating a hostile takeover of government and doing it in a non-transparent way. What's your response to that criticism?
Well, first of all, you couldn't ask for a stronger mandate from the public. The public voted. We have a majority of the public voting for President Trump. We won the House, we won the Senate. The people voted for major government reform. There should be no doubt about that. That was on the campaign. The president spoke about that at every rally. The people voted for major government reform, and that's what people are going to get. They're going to get what they voted for. And a lot of times, people that don't get what they voted for, but in this presidency, they are going to get what they voted for. And that's what democracy is all about.
Mr. Musk, the White House says that you will identify and excuse yourself from any conflicts of interest that you may have. Does that mean that you are, in effect, policing yourself? What are the checks and balances that are in place to ensure that there is accountability and transparency?
Well, we actually are trying to be as transparent as possible. In fact, we post our actions to the Doge handle on X and to the Doge website. So all of our actions are maximally transparent. In fact, I don't think there's
totally.
been...
Virtually everything that they've tackled in terms of like combating weird spending habits or whatever are just things that the government spends money on that sounds stupid or is against like the Republican agenda, right? Or even if it's not something against the Republican agenda, the broader Republican agenda, they present it as though it is, right? They'll say like, oh, we're giving condoms to Hamas. That's like a great example of this, right? When that's not the case. Now, that is not going to be, like, you're not going to be able to put a dent in American government spending that way when you're finding like $200,000 or $46,000 that was spent on one thing or $200,000 that was spent on another thing. The American government is major. It's massive. It's incredibly costly. Okay? And doing this in the stupidest ways possible without actually hiring regulators, ironically, that understand what these programs are, like with proper audits, with proper auditors, and trying to undermine it across the board is, of course, leading to all of these issues that you have seen so far with like mass layoffs or the threat of mass layoffs that don't make any sense whatsoever. Dude got checked by the judicial branch and called it a coup. Checks and balances don't exist with the guy. That's what I mean. And the last line of defense that barely exists now is the judicial branch saying, yeah, you can't just decide to lay off the entirety of the federal government labor force. Like, you can't do that. These are tens of thousands of people that rely on a paycheck from the government. That's so stupid.
Of interest, and we watch that also. He's a big businessman. He's a successful guy. That's why we want him doing this. We don't want an unsuccessful guy doing this. Now, one thing also that Elon hasn't really mentioned are the groups of people that are getting some of these payments. They're ridiculous, and we're talking about billions of dollars that we've already found. We found fraud and abuse. I would say those two words as opposed to the third word that I usually
No, the
use,
condom
but in
story
this
wasn't
case,
just
fraud
condoms, and it
and
wasn't.
abuse.
It was
It's
Mozambique,
abusive because
and
most
it
of
wasn't
these
just condoms.
things are
It was a
virtually
broader
made up, or
anti-HIV.
certain money shouldn't be
It was a
You know what?
broader HIV prevention initiative that exists in Africa.
But we're talking about tens of billions of dollars that we've already found. And now a judge who's an activist judge wants to try and stop us from doing this. Why? Why would they want to do that? I campaigned on this. I campaigned on the fact that I said
Yeah.
government is
Mozambique,
corrupt.
Gaza.
And it is very corrupt.
Is it actually
It's
fraud though?
very,
No,
very,
it's not.
it's
That's the
also
problem. You can't just declare something to be a fraud because you don't personally like it. Okay? The simplest example is contraceptives. Let's say that there is enough people within the Republican government that consider contraceptives to be unchristian-like. And there are plenty of people who think contraceptives are unchristian-like. You can't just say, oh, it's fraudulent to spend this these pre-allocated funds on contraceptive programs in Africa in an effort to combat sexually transmitted diseases. Just because you don't agree with it doesn't mean it's fucking fraud.
After month, and you have various
It's ridiculous.
even much worse than that, actually, much worse. And I guess you call that incompetence, maybe.
Yeah.
It could be corruption. It could be deals made on both sides, you know, where the guy gets some money, he kicks. I think there's a lot of kickback here. I see a lot of kickback here.
There's a lot of kickbacks.
Tremendous kickback.
This
'cause
whole
nobody
Musk
could be so
purge is built
stupid
upon
to
a
give out
rhetorical
some of
sleight
these
of hand that
contracts.
everything is
So he has to get
everything I
kickback.
ideologically disagree with because
So,
it's woke and gay is per se
that's
waste,
what I
abuse,
got
and fraud. And no
elected
one in our
for,
media
that and
highlights this massive
borders
category
and
error that is
military and a lot of
actually
things,
kind of
but this is a
important.
big part of it. And I hope that the court system is going to allow us to do what we have to do. We got elected to among other things, find all of this fraud, abuse, all of this horrible stuff going on. And we've already found billions of dollars, not like a little bit, billions, many billions of dollars. And when you get down to it, it's going to be probably close to $1 trillion. It could be close to $1 trillion that we're going to find.
No,
Will have-
that part is completely ridiculous. You are not cutting $1 trillion worth of government spending. Okay, I wish.
I'm not knocking anybody for that, but he has certain leanings, and he wants us to stop looking. How do you stop looking? I mean, we've already found it. We have a case in New York where a hotel has paid $59 million, $59 million because it's housing migrants. illegal
Dude,
migrants.
additionally funny, Trump is saying this because he did this with the Trump hotels when he was president. He literally did this. He did this exact same thing with Trump properties while he was president. He would get Secret Service to stay in his own properties to pay exorbitant fees to his own fucking properties.
Cut the budget deficit in half from 2 trillion to 1 trillion. And it's really two things: competence and caring. And if you add competence and caring, you'll cut the budget deficit in half. And I fully expect to be scrutinized.
You will see it.
in
America
daily
overspending
press
issue is bad. You will thank future later. Elon, not perfect, but he's smart. Dog, I am not saying that the American government is not wasteful or even engaging in fraudulent activities. I'm simply stating that these guys are not actually tackling that, okay? If they were looking at genuine fraud, they would end up harming a lot of their, important corporate benefactors. So, of course, they're not going to do that. They're not going to go after, for example, the military, okay? You want to know how I know that they're not going to go after the military and fraudulent extra spending for no reason? Because Donald Trump has already said he's signing off on additional billions of dollars in weapons contracts to the state of Israel, for example. Okay? If they wanted to stop, I like that he's picking his nose on camera. It's hilarious. Like, if they wanted to go after fraud and waste, they would not take out the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Okay? How is that taking out fraud? That is an agency tasked with helping consumers and has helped consumers. They've recovered $21 billion of fraudulent and wasteful expenses that these fucking criminal corporations have actually forced upon the American public. For the price point of $1 billion, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau has actually given back to the American public $21 billion. Okay? You really think they're tackling fraud, or do you think they're making it easier to steal from the American public, to make it easier for corporations to keep grafting you?
When you're looking at something, you'll find you're looking for 1 out of 100. Here, you're almost reversing it. You look for one that's good.
Yeah.
And you can look at the title and you say, why are we doing this? Why are we doing that? And the public gets it. You know, the public gets it. You've seen the polls. The public is saying, why are we paying all this money? This for years, this has gone on.
Yeah, Trump is moving to reverse medical debt and overdraft protections implemented by the CFPB. Wow, how wonderful for the American public.
Do you agree with that? Is that the
I
plan?
really don't know. I know this. We're finding tremendous fraud and tremendous abuse.
If only there were people that wasn't, if only there were more people and not just like random dumbass Twitch streamers like myself actively talking about this every time they had an opportunity to talk about this, instead of talking about USAID and how we must defend USAID. And if we don't defend USAID, then China is going to take over. Like, instead of saying shit like that, maybe they should talk about this. I don't know. The only other media outlets that I've ever heard this kind of commentary from is myself, Michael from Pennsylvania, Chapo Trap House, TrueAnon, and fucking Majority Report. What is going on? Where is the Democratic Party? This is 100% an abdication of duty, okay? It shouldn't be up to Drop Site News, Majority Report, myself, and some others that are actively saying this is a ridiculous thing that they're doing. It is actually not beneficial for the American public. This is a horrible thing to do, especially when you have someone that is responsive to populist sentiment, okay? It's crazy. It's crazy to me that Hakeem Jeffries is not talking about this every goddamn day, okay? It's crazy to me that the Democratic Party is not going on every news outlet and saying, look at what they're doing. Look at what they're doing. They claim to be on the side of the American public. Instead, they're just showing their bellies, dude.
Spending bill on the March 14th deadline to try to rein him in.
Chuck Schumer also said they're not going to put up a government spending fight as well, which I think is ridiculous. I think they are going to do that, I suspect. That would be insane.
Look, here's the bottom line. The Republicans are already shutting down good chunks of the government.
And no, this isn't hypocrisy baiting, chatter. What are you talking about? This is directly saying that the Republicans are currently actively doing harm to the American public. Okay? Do you understand? It's not about like, oh, look at the hypocrites. They said they care about the workers, but here's what they're doing. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying communicate that they're harming the workers. This is more than hypocrisy baiting. Hypocrisy baiting is when you say that Trump's border wall is stupid and you're racist for defending it, and then turning around and being like, we are the ones who actually want to build the border wall. Trump doesn't want to build the border wall any longer. That's dumbass hypocrisy baiting. That makes you look like an idiot. Okay? That makes you look like you got caught, that Trump was right all along, that immigrants do constitute a national security threat, and that you got caught, and now you're going, oopsie, I guess we want to build the border wall now. Everyone can see that you're the hypocrite in that situation. You're the dumbass in that situation. Saying that the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is actually responsible for $21 billion of fraudulent and wasteful and criminal expenditures that the American public had to pay for, the American consumers had to pay for, okay? And then turning around and abolishing that agency being an overall burden, directly talking about medical debt on your credit card, directly talking about overdraft fees, things that every single American Things that every single American can understand, because at a certain point, they have experienced this, okay? They've experienced these problems. They should remind people why they no longer experience some of these problems. It is because of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Same with Lena Khan and all of the initiatives from Lena Khan. Taking out Lena Khan is a massively consequential move. Anyway, let's continue listening to this dumbass now.
And we are moving fast, so we will make mistakes, but we'll also fix the mistakes very quickly. So
Do you see it as a worthy cause, USAID?
I think that there are some worthy things, but overall, if you say what was the bang for the buck, I would say it was not very good. And there was far too much of what USAID was doing was influencing elections in ways that I think were dubious and do not stand the light of day.
I can just ask a follow-up to the Pentagon contracts. If you have received billions of dollars in contracts from the Pentagon, and the president's directing you to look into the Department of Defense, is
Yes,
that
which we
a
definitely need
conflict
to
of
do and
interest?
are going to do at the president's request.
Does that present a conflict of interest for you?
No, because you'd have to look at the individual contract and say, first of all, I'm not the one, filing the contract. It's people at SpaceX or someone who will be putting for the contract. And I'd like to say, if you see any contract where where it was awarded to SpaceX and it wasn't by far the best value for money for the taxpayer, let me know, because every one of them was.
The president said the other day that you might look at treasuries. Could you explain that a little bit? What kind of fraud, and that question goes to both of you, what kind of fraud are you expecting to see or do you see right now in U.S. treasuries?
Yeah, I think you mean the Treasury Department as opposed to Treasury bills, or.
You also referenced treasuries on Air Force One the other night.
Go ahead.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, really, the first order of business is to make sure we're actually collecting. Sorry for this. I thought my son might enjoy this, but he's sticking his fingers in my ears and stuff. So it's a bit hard to hear sometimes. Hey, stop that. No, the stuff we're doing with Treasury Department is so basic that you can't believe it doesn't exist already. So for example, it's like, what type of payment is this? You can't just leave the field blank. Currently, many payments, the field is left blank. And you have to describe what's the payment for, some basic rationalization. That also is left blank. So this is why, the Pentagon, when's the last time the Pentagon passed an audit? I mean, a decade ago, maybe? Ever? Really? And we want to just, in order to actually pass audits, you have to have financial information that allows you to trace the payments. And once in a while, the Treasury has to pause payments if it thinks the payment is going to a fraudulent organization.
What?
To get on that payment, the do not pay list, it means that this is someone no pay list. It means that this is someone that is just, it's like dead people, terrorists, known fraudsters, that kind of thing. We should not pay them. But currently we do, which is crazy. We should stop that.
Many transactions. And by the way, 100 team. And for the sake of the country, I hope that the person that's in charge and the other people that report to me that are in charge are allowed to do the right thing, namely make sure everything's honest, legitimate, and competent. But we're looking at just, when you look at USAID, that's one. We're going to look at the military. We're going to look at education. They're much bigger areas. But the USAID is really corrupt. I'll tell you, it's corrupt. It's
They
incompetent,
cooked the
and
stream. It's
really corrupt.
desync now.
And I can't imagine a judge saying, well, it may be corrupt, but you don't have the right. You got elected to look over the country and to, as we say, make America great again, but you don't have the right to go and, as we say, make America great again, but you don't have the right to go and look and see whether or not things are right that they're paying or that things are honest that they're paying. And nobody can even believe this. Other people, law professors, right away. You're supposed to be running the country, but we're not allowed to look at who they're paying it to and what they're paying. We have massive amounts of fraud that we caught. I think we probably caught way over a lot of billions of dollars already in, 2 weeks?
Yes.
and it's going to go to numbers that you're not going to believe. And much, as I said, much is incompetence and much is dishonesty. We have to catch it. And the only way we're going to catch it is to look for it. And if a judge is going to say you're not allowed to look for it, that's pretty sad for our country. I don't understand how it could even work.
The buyout program, can you personally guarantee that?
Which one?
The buyout program, the operative federal workers. Can you personally guarantee that the workers who opt in to resign now will be paid through
Well,
September?
they'll get their money, but they're getting a good deal. They're getting a big buyout. And what we're trying to do is reduce government. We have too many people. We have office space. It's occupied by 4%. Nobody's showing up to work because they were told not to. And then Biden gave them a 5-year pass, some of them, 48,000 of them, gave them a 5-year pass, that for 5 years you don't have.
I'm more conservative. Serious question, because I honestly don't know. Are liberals thinking what they are claiming to find in U.S. aid is lies? No. Liberals are saying that U.S. aid is a profoundly important aspect of American foreign policy that works to continue American dominance by doing soft power initiatives around the globe. Some of those initiatives are actually good for the overall for the overall public that receives these initiatives, like, you know, reproductive health care in Africa is good. It's not a bad thing. Okay, even though it is done at the behest of the United States of America doing soft power in these countries, making these countries rely on the U.S. and making those security cooperation agreements that come later down the line an overall easier one to sell to the broader public. Okay. Having said that, however, there is a lot of just insanity in the way that they're targeting things. Like, they'll just be like, oh, well, they're giving $40,000 to a Guatemalan transplant, and then you look it up, and it's actually like a joint partnership agreement to fund the arts. Okay. Between a Guatemalan university and an American university. It's like, yeah, that's not fraudulent expenditure. I think a lot of these dummies also personally think that, like, anything that they're doing in terms of, pro-LGBTQ or whatever is not done at the behest of, like, later utilizing these existing relationships as a way to destabilize countries, or at least, like, to have some kind of civil society organization on the ground to develop a better understanding, to do espionage, if necessary. But instead, it's just because we're woke, and we're doing this because we're truly woke. It's a way to believe the propaganda that liberals have put forth. Okay? It's ironic, because that means you genuinely believe that the American government is doing things because they're kind. You have to be a real dumbass to think that the American government is doing things because they're kind. Okay? Yeah, the American government is woke and gay. That's why they were doing aid. Ridiculous. They're doing aid so they can eventually utilize the existing relationships that they've developed on the ground for whatever suits their purpose. Also, none of it is fraudulent. Okay? As Adam Johnson mentions here, everything I ideologically disagree with because it's woke and gay does not mean it's waste, abuse, and fraud. Do you understand? Like, oh, well, I don't like this personally, so I think it's stupid and bad and abuse and fraud is a ridiculous way to do this, okay? Unintelligent person alive. 3, if you're really implying that U.S. aid is not done out of pure goodness of the American heart, then name one thing U.S. did wrong in the last 50 years. I can't name one. It would be easier for me to name one thing that America has done that is... There's nothing I can name in general that America has done for in the name of good, okay? Even Ukraine is a great example of what I'm talking about. Ukraine is on the right side in terms of morality, okay? Ukraine has an understandable moral position to rid its national borders of a military invasion. America's interest in Ukraine, however, which Trump basically revealed openly, is not so good. Okay? You can't go wrong back in Ukraine. That's it. You have to look at the situation and truly believe that America is always doing good things around the world for you to assume for you to assume that their intentions with Ukraine is good, even if they openly state that their intentions are not pure. Their intentions are impure. It's also short-sighted policy because there's a funding after-school programs for undeserved communities, DEI, and fraud, but the role of that program is to decrease incarceration, saving the state money. For example, it can also be self-serving. Yes, a lot of those things, a lot of the initiatives like that, after-school programs and whatnot, seem costly, wasteful, and stupid. Like, they'll be like, oh, dude, they're doing violin, they're doing, like, musical education lessons in the south side of Chicago or whatever. And it's like, yeah, that is an incredibly important initiative. Because as studies have shown time and time again, after school programs actually significantly lower at-risk youth's likelihood to go and do crimes, okay? They're not doing it because they're woke and gay. They're doing it because it's obviously beneficial. It saves the government more money down the line as well if these kids are not doing crime and then doing crime obviously is chaotic. They're stealing cars and whatever. Or obviously you don't want like property loss in general for the broader public. But it's also better overall for the government now that you don't have to like put a bunch of children in the system at an early age. But that requires you to, one, do a little bit of reading. In order to understand these initiatives and the long-term impact of said initiatives, that requires you to imagine an alternative instead of simply closing your eyes and going, nah, dude, I have these racist beliefs that these guys are intrinsically evil and inferior. I won't say that they're inferior because of their race. I'll say they're inferior because of their culture as a substitute for race. And that no amount of violent lessons is going to stop these kids from stealing Kias or whatever. Okay? When all evidence points to the exact opposite, that these initiatives are very helpful. Anyway, if only we could get Republicans to think that, like, the carceral state is woke and gay and incredibly costly. The AP says it was barred from covering a White House event because of its editorial policy regarding the Gulf of Mexico. Today, we were informed by the White House that if AP did not align its editorial standards with President Trump's executive order renaming the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, AP would be barred from accessing an event in the Oval Office. This afternoon, AP's reporter was blocked from attending an executive order signing. Ugh. So fucking petty. It's so unimaginably stupid. Anyway, here. There was a decent question here in terms of conflict of interest. But if there's a conflict of interest when it comes to you yourself, for instance, you've received billions of dollars in federal contracts, is there any sort of accountability, check and balance in place that would provide any transparency to the American people?
There's a conflict of interest when it comes to you yourself. For instance, you've received billions of dollars in federal contracts. When it comes to the Pentagon, for instance, which the president I know has directed you to look into.
Yeah.
Are you policing yourself in that? Is there any sort of accountability, check and balance in place that would provide any transparency for the American people?
Well, all of our actions are fully public. So if you see anything, you say like, wait a second, hey, Elon, that seems like maybe that's, there's a conflict there. It's not like people are going to be shy about saying that. They'll say it immediately,
Including you yourself.
Yes. But transparency is what builds trust, not simply somebody asserting trust. So not somebody saying they're trustworthy, but transparency, so you can see everything that's going on. And then you can see, am I doing something that benefits one of my companies or not? It's totally obvious.
And if we thought that, we would not let him do that.
No, you wouldn't. No, you are doing that. You literally brought up fraudulent and wasteful spending, talking about how the federal government offered millions of dollars to New York hotels in order to house migrants. That's not wasteful spending. That's the federal government actually trying to fix the crisis caused by Governor Greg Abbott and Ron DeSantis by, without informing the local authorities, shipping, kidnapping, and trafficking tens of thousands of migrants from the state of Texas into the state of New York to play political football with people's lives. In that process, the federal government has to step in and say, okay, for the overflow, we have to, in the interim period, we have to make sure that these people are housed. Okay? So what do? They pay hotels to house the migrants. Okay? That is not wasteful spending or fraudulent spending. That's just an understandable thing that the federal government did. You know what is actually fraud? A conflict of interest? When you are the president and you own a bunch of hotels and you actually overcharge the federal government to stay in those hotels during the duration of your presidency, and you make money that way with federal funds. That's actually a conflict of interest. That's actually wasteful spending directly. That is a direct instance of fraud. That's what Donald Trump did. But of course, no one will look at that and go, what the fuck are we talking about?
Segment or look in that area if we thought there was a lack of transparency or a conflict of interest. And we watched that also. He's a big businessman. He's a successful guy. That's why we want him doing this. We don't want an unsuccessful guy doing this.
Yeah. Also, you got this. Elon Musk's pushing into the financial services with a Visa deal while immediately after taking out the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. It's crazy. Source, not doubting you, have just never heard of this till today. Which one do you want to source for? Donald Trump charging the federal government? Or the thing that he just brought forward? Here. Trump overcharged Secret Service by 300% for accommodations at his hotels. House Oversight Committee's report further called the ex-president's term the world's greatest get-rich-quick scheme.
現在太陽風呀風高風味，是做太陽是毛色都飞，看看到我們的職業版美，這裡本身當家。